In a diner filled with oblivious patrons, a small boy's urgent hand movements were met with indifference, but one woman recognized his silent plea and responded in kind. The light that flared in his eyes was as if she had handed him the entire universe. She was unaware, however, that his father was the most formidable figure in the city's underworld, and her single act of compassion had just irrevocably reshaped all their destinies. The hum of the fluorescent fixtures overhead sounded like irritated hornets to Emma as she swirled the tepid coffee in her mug for the umpteenth time. Mickey's Diner was hardly a highlight on any Chicago travel guide, but in the dead of night at 1:47 a.m., it was one of the few establishments serving what could pass for sustenance. The crimson vinyl of the booths was webbed with age, and the checkerboard tiles had seen brighter days, yet it was warm. More importantly, it was a refuge from her vacant apartment, where the quietness was deafening. Emma had made this a nightly ritual for weeks, a way to escape the nightmares that haunted her sleep. Dolores, the night shift waitress, now moved with a familiar rhythm, refilling Emma's cup without a word, leaving her to her solitude. But this night felt charged, different. A palpable tension hung in the atmosphere, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. It was then that she saw him. A boy, no older than 8 or 9, occupied a corner booth, the one furthest from the entrance. His little hands were a blur, shaping the air into forms and gestures Emma knew instantly. A pang of empathy struck her as she saw him desperately trying to catch the eye of anyone who walked by, the cook, the waitress, even patrons on their way to the restroom. Yet each person looked straight past him, their expressions a mixture of annoyance and something that resembled apprehension. Emma's brow furrowed. The child was impeccably dressed in a fine navy sweater and crisply ironed khakis, an outfit that likely cost more than her weekly paycheck from her data entry job. His dark hair was perfectly combed, and despite the late hour, he was wide-eyed and alert. But his gaze held a profound melancholy that was unsettling in someone so young. Why was he being so deliberately overlooked? She observed as Dolores cautiously neared the boy's table, her usual gruffness replaced by an expression that bordered on terror. The boy's hands quickened, their movements more urgent. Emma could make out the signs for please and help. His face contorted in frustration. Dolores retreated without taking an order, muttering something under her breath that Emma couldn't catch. That was the last straw. Emma had become fluent in American Sign Language 15 years prior, when her younger sister Sarah was born with profound hearing loss. Even after Sarah's passing in a car crash 3 years ago, the language that had been their unique bond remained etched in her memory. She had made a vow to Sarah never to let it atrophy, to always be ready to assist someone in need. Rising on unsteady legs, Emma crossed the diner, painfully aware of the conversations that fizzled out as she moved. The boy looked up, his dark eyes widening in astonishment as she slid into the booth opposite him. "Hello," Emma said gently, before raising her hands to sign. "What is your name?" The change in him was immediate and heart-wrenching. The boy's entire demeanor brightened as if a switch had been flipped. His hands danced through the air, signing so rapidly that Emma had to ask him to slow down. "My name is Luca," he signed, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You can understand me?" "Yes, I can understand you perfectly," Emma signed back, a lump forming in her own throat. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" Before Luca could reply, the diner's front door was thrown open with such violence that the bell above it was ripped from its hook. Emma's blood ran cold. 6 men in dark, tailored suits swarmed the entrance, their hands unnervingly concealed within their jackets. The few other customers either dropped to the floor or scrambled behind booths. Dolores let out a stifled cry, but it was the 7th man who made Emma's heart stop cold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, perhaps in his early 40s, with eyes the color of slate and a face that looked chiseled from stone. His black hair was impeccably styled, and his charcoal suit was worth more than her car. His every step seemed to command space, everyone and everything bending away as if from a natural disaster. This wasn't just a man with a dangerous aura. This was power incarnate. The man's gaze scanned the diner with a predator's precision, finally locking onto the corner booth. His expression shifted from icy calculation to something unreadable. Was it relief or fear? Upon seeing Luca, he moved with a singular purpose, his expensive shoes echoing on the tiles like a metronome counting down. Emma's instincts screamed at her to flee, but Luca's small hand had found hers, and she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. Not now. The man stopped at their booth and knelt beside Luca, his imposing frame somehow managing a gentle posture as he touched the boy's cheek. "There you are," he murmured, his voice laced with a faint Italian accent, like velvet stretched over steel. "You gave me a scare, kid." Luca's hands began to move with excitement, signing to the man who, to Emma's shock, seemed to understand. Then, Luca pointed at Emma, his face radiant with joy, and signed something that made the man's steely eyes snap to her. The temperature in the diner seemed to plummet. Emma felt like a specimen under a microscope, completely exposed and hopelessly ensnared. "You," the man said, his voice quiet yet carrying across the now silent room. "Who are you, and how do you know my son's language?" Emma's mouth was dry. Her survival instincts urged her to lie, to run, to do anything but answer truthfully. But Luca's hand was still a warm, trusting presence in hers, his eyes filled with the hope of someone finally being seen. "I'm Emma," she managed to whisper. "Emma Chun. I learned from my sister." The man's gaze never left her. Behind him, his men had secured every exit. No one was leaving until he permitted it. "Emma Chun," he repeated, as if tasting the name. He then offered a smile that was infinitely more terrifying than any frown. "I'm Adrien Russo, and you, Miss Chun, have just become a person of great interest to me." The silence that followed Adrien's declaration was stretched thin, ready to snap. Emma's own pulse hammered in her ears as she watched this man, Adrien Russo, scrutinize her with a focus that made her feel like prey. "Everyone out," Adrien said softly, his eyes still locked on Emma. He didn't need to raise his voice. The command was absolute. The remaining patrons scurried out as if their lives were on the line. Dolores dropped a coffee pot which shattered and fled toward a back exit. In less than a minute, the diner was occupied only by Emma, Luca, Adrien, and his 6 men, who were positioned with tactical precision. Adrien slid into the booth beside Luca, who immediately leaned into his father's side, his eyes still fixed on Emma with hopeful desperation. "Let's have a proper conversation," Adrien said. Emma's hands trembled as she placed them on the table. "I told you. I'm Emma Chun. I work in data services. I learned sign language because my sister Sarah was born deaf." Her voice caught on Sarah's name. "She passed away 3 years ago. A car accident." Emma forced herself to meet those piercing gray eyes. "I kept practicing because I made her a promise." Something flickered in Adrien's expression, a momentary crack in his granite facade. Luca tugged on his father's sleeve and began signing rapidly. Adrien's face softened as he watched his son, revealing a man who loved his child fiercely. "Tell her thank you," Luca signed to his father. "Tell her she's the first person who talked to me like I'm real." Adrien's jaw clenched. "Luca says you're the first person to treat him like he exists." His voice was heavy with years of frustration. "Do you realize how rare that is?" Emma looked from the boy to his father. "People can be ignorant," she said simply. "Being unable to hear or speak doesn't make someone less of a person." "No," Adrien conceded, "but being my son does." The confession hung in the air. The puzzle pieces clicked into place for Emma. The fear in everyone's eyes, the way people shunned Luca, the armed entourage. "You're involved in organized crime," she stated, her voice barely a whisper. Adrien's smile was as sharp as a razor. Among other things, he gestured to one of his men. "Marco, bring the car. We're leaving." "Wait!" Emma said, panic rising. "I should go home. I have work." "No." Adrien's voice cut through her protests. "You're coming with us." "I'm not going anywhere with you." She started to slide out of the booth but froze as all 6 men shifted, blocking any path to escape. "You can't just abduct me." "I'm not abducting you," Adrien said calmly, his eyes turning cold. "I'm making you an offer." "What kind of offer?" Adrien looked at Luca, who was watching them with wide, anxious eyes. The boy's hands moved. "Is Emma in trouble because of me?" "No, kid," Adrien signed back, his movements surprisingly fluid. "Emma is going to help us." He turned back to Emma. "My son has never had a meaningful conversation with anyone but me. I only learned basic signs after he was born. You saw how he responded to you. That's wonderful, but..." "Luca trusts no one," Adrien interrupted. "In 8 years, he has never placed his trust in a single person besides me. Not his security, not his tutors. No one." His gray eyes bored into hers. Until tonight. Until you? What are you saying? Adrien leaned forward. I'm saying my son needs you, Miss Chun. And what my son needs, he gets.
You can't just take me?
Actually, I can. Adrien's voice was like velvet-wrapped steel. In my world, when something precious and rare appears, something that could bring my son safety and happiness, I don't allow it to walk away. He stood, extending a hand to Luca. My son trusts no one, Miss Chun. Now, you don't have a choice either. Two of his men flanked her booth. Their message was clear. This is insane, Emma whispered. I'm a nobody. I live in a studio apartment and eat instant noodles. Adrien paused at the door, Luca's hand in his. He looked back at Emma with something akin to regret. Perhaps, he admitted, but my world has just become yours, whether you like it or not. As Emma was firmly escorted out, she saw Luca looking back, his face alight with trust, signing, "Thank you," over and over. She was being pulled into a realm of opulence and peril she couldn't have fathomed, with no path of retreat. The wrought iron gates of the Russo estate parted silently for their SUV, revealing a world Emma had only seen in movies. The mansion was a Gothic marvel of limestone and dark, imposing windows, surrounded by acres of immaculate grounds. But it was the subtle details that churned her stomach. Security cameras tracking their every move, armed men patrolling with military discipline, and windows thick enough to be bulletproof. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Welcome to our world, Adrien said as they pulled up. Luca was asleep on his father's shoulder. A stern-faced woman in a crisp black uniform, Mrs. Castellano, met them at the door. Sir, she said, her voice betraying no warmth. The guest room in the east wing is prepared. Her gaze flickered to Luca, a look of resignation and fear crossing her features. The foyer was a cavern of cold grandeur, with marble floors and a colossal crystal chandelier. The house, for all its wealth, felt lifeless. Maria will show you to your room, Adrien said, gesturing to Mrs. Castellano. We'll discuss the arrangements tomorrow. What arrangements? Emma demanded. What do you expect from me? Adrien paused at the grand staircase, Luca still in his arms. Help my son, he said simply. Give him the childhood this house has failed to provide. As Mrs. Castellano led her through the silent, watchful corridors, Emma felt the weight of their curiosity and fear. The boy doesn't usually bring strangers home, the housekeeper said. You mean Adrien? I mean Master Luca, miss. He's particular, Emma stopped. Difficult how? Mrs. Castellano's face became a closed book. Here is your room. It was larger than Emma's entire apartment. Before the housekeeper could leave, Emma asked, How long has Luca lived like this, surrounded by people who are afraid of him? The woman's knuckles whitened. That boy is Mr. Russo's heir. He's dangerous, whether he means to be or not. Getting close to him, that's not safe for anyone. An hour later, there was a soft tap on her door. It was Luca in Superman pajamas. I couldn't sleep, he signed. Can we talk? He perched on a chair in her room. Everyone here is scared of me, he signed, his movements tinged with sadness. They look at me like I'm broken. Emma's heart broke. She knelt before him. You're not broken, Luca. You are perfect. Papa says that too. But he's the only one. Well, now you have me. For the next hour, Emma made Luca laugh. She told him silly stories and taught him new, joyful signs. When he giggled, she felt a subtle shift in the house. She was being watched. From a shadowed doorway, Adrien observed his son's transformation with a growing sense of unease. This woman had given Luca something he'd sought his entire life: normalcy. But in Adrien's world, happiness was a liability, and Emma Chun was fast becoming both. Miles away, in a smoke-filled warehouse, a rival, Vincent Torino, ended a call. So the boss has a new weakness, he said to his crew. First the kid, now some girl who can talk to him. What's the play? His lieutenant asked. Vincent's smile was predatory. We take them both. 3 weeks into her new life, Emma found a routine that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Mornings were for lessons with Luca, not in math or history, but in expressing emotions he'd never been allowed to feel. They created stories with their hands, and most importantly, she taught him his thoughts mattered. Today we're learning about feelings. Emma signed in the library. I know feelings. Luca signed back. Happy, sad, scared. What about frustrated? Or proud? Emma demonstrated. I feel frustrated when Mrs. Castellano runs away when I ask for cookies, he signed. And proud when Papa watches us and smiles. Your father watches us? Every day, Luca nodded. He stands in the doorway. He thinks I don't notice. A strange feeling stirred in Emma's chest. She had felt Adrien's presence, the way his rare smiles were reserved for his son, but she hadn't realized he was observing her so closely. What does he look like when he watches? She asked. Like he's seeing something impossible, Luca signed. Like in the movies when the good guy wins. That evening, Emma heard voices from Adrien's study. The Torino family is making moves, boss, a man said. Vincent's been asking questions about your son, and boss, they're asking about the girl too. Emma's blood ran cold. Vincent thinks the kid is your weakness, the second man said. If he's smart, he'll go after her first. Her heart pounding, Emma ran to the study and burst in. I heard, she said breathlessly, about Vincent Torino, about plans to hurt Luca, to hurt me. Adrien studied her, realizing she had just irrevocably crossed a line into his world. How much did you hear? He asked quietly. Enough to know Luca is in danger because of me. I should leave. No. Adrien's voice was a blade. He moved to stand inches from her. You're not leaving. Vincent Torino is a dead man walking. And you? He reached out, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You just proved I can trust you. That you'd risk your own safety to warn me about a threat to my son. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Of course, Luca is special. Adrien's expression softened. From this moment forward, he said, his voice an unbreakable vow. You are under my protection. No one touches you, Emma. The way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. Marco, he called, his eyes never leaving hers. Double the security. Anyone who even looks at Miss Chun wrong answers to me. As his men left, he kept his hand on her face, and Emma realized with startling clarity she was no longer just Luca's teacher. She was falling for his father. 2 days later, Emma insisted Luca needed a trip to a park. He'd been cooped up for weeks. Absolutely not, Adrien said, but Luca's signed plea to see the ducks at Lincoln Park, and Emma's argument that the 8-year-old had never just played in a park, hit their mark. 1 hour, Adrien conceded. Full security. You stay within 10 feet of Marco. The park was peaceful, and Luca was ecstatic, feeding breadcrumbs to ducks. They're not scared of me, he signed with wonder. Marco and 3 other men stood guard, their professionalism a stark reminder of the danger. Emma was so absorbed in Luca's joy that she almost missed the jogger who passed their bench for the 3rd time. Then she noticed other things. The maintenance worker fixing the same trash can for 20 minutes, the woman with a stroller circling back. Marco, she called, but it was too late. Chaos erupted. The jogger pulled a weapon and fired. The other suspicious figures produced automatic rifles. The doors of a van burst open, disgorging masked assailants. Get down! Marco roared, but Emma was already sprinting toward Luca, who was frozen with terror by the pond. She tackled him behind an oak tree just as a volley of shots tore through the bench where he'd been standing. Marco and his men were outnumbered. The air filled with the sound of weapons fire. Emma saw Marco take a hit but keep fighting. Then she saw 2 masked figures flanking their position. Acting on pure instinct, Emma threw herself in front of Luca just as one of them fired. A line of fire tore across her side as the bullet grazed her ribs. Rough hands grabbed Luca and pulled him away. No, Emma screamed, lunging forward despite the blood spreading across her shirt. A masked man backhanded her, sending her to the ground. Through a blur, she saw them dragging Luca to an SUV. His terrified eyes met hers as he desperately signed, "Help me!" She tried to get up, but her vision faded, and she collapsed. The last thing she heard was the squeal of tires. She awoke 6 hours later in a private hospital room. The first face she saw was Adrien's. He looked like he'd aged a decade. They took him, she whispered, the words like swallowing glass. Adrien's hands were shaking. Emma, you took a bullet for my son. You threw yourself between him and armed men. But it wasn't enough, she cried. He's gone because I wanted him to see the stupid ducks. He's gone because Vincent Torino is a dead man who just doesn't know it yet. Adrien's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. I'm going to burn this city to the ground until I find my son. Through the window, Emma could see smoke rising from several locations across the Chicago skyline. The war had started. The warehouse was a tomb of rust, oil, and fear. Luca huddled in a corner, his wrists raw from zip ties. The single bare bulb cast monstrous shadows of his captors. What terrified him most was the isolating silence. the certainty that no one here could understand him. Emma, he thought, his hands forming her name in the empty air. Where are you? Across the city, Emma was staging her own escape. Discharged against medical advice, she'd been placed in a safe house by Adrien. I need some air, she told Marco, her guard. On the balcony, she eyed the fire escape. 10 minutes later, she was hailing a taxi. The docks, she said. Double fare, no questions. She recalled Luca showing her a secret sign language, an older Italian dialect, that he shared with his father for emergencies. Those signs might be his only hope. Luca was fascinated by water. He'd gravitate toward the harbor. She started searching the abandoned buildings near Lake Michigan. On her fourth try, she saw it. Fresh tire tracks and the faint shadow of a child in a second-story window. She slipped through a broken window on a loading dock, the glass cutting her palms. Moving like a ghost, she followed voices to a back room. Luca was alive. 3 armed men were inside, focused on a phone call. Boss wants the kid delivered by midnight, one said. If Russo doesn't cave, we send him pieces. Emma's blood ran cold. She positioned herself where Luca could see her through a gap in some crates. Little Wolf, she signed, using Adrien's pet name for his son. I'm here. Luca's eyes widened, but he stayed silent, signing back with tiny, careful gestures. 3 men, 2 armed, waiting for Papa's call. They want to trade me. His hands moved with precision. But Emma, the man with the scar, is coming back. He's checking the perimeter, a 4th man, one she hadn't seen. When I signal, run, she told Luca. Run to the water. Your papa will find you. She knew it was a long shot. She was 1 wounded woman against 4 armed men. Just as she prepared to create a diversion, Luca's hands moved in a frantic warning. Behind you. She spun to find herself face to face with a man whose scarred face she knew from security briefings. Vincent Torino himself, pointing a weapon directly at her head. Well, well, Vincent said with a chilling smile. Looks like Adrien Russo's little girlfriend came to play hero. His scarred face twisted into a grin. I was expecting Adrien himself, but instead, I get his son's babysitter. Let the boy go, Vincent, Emma said, her voice steady despite her terror. Your fight is with Adrien. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Vincent said, stepping closer. The boy is the key to everything. Adrien's weakness. His gaze flicked to Emma, though it looks like he's developed another one. From inside the room, one of his men shouted, Boss, we've got vehicles approaching fast. Vincent's smile widened. Right on schedule. He pressed the weapon to Emma's temple. You're going to walk into that room and we're all going to wait for Adrien to come save his precious family. But then came the sharp crack of sniper fire from outside. What the hell was that? One of Vincent's men yelled. Jimmy's not responding on the radio. The warehouse's front wall exploded inward. Through the smoke and dust, dark figures poured in with military precision. And then Adrien himself appeared, a figure of vengeance in tactical gear, his eyes burning with a fury that could melt steel. Vincent! Adrien's voice cut through the chaos. I'm here for my son. Send him out and maybe I'll let you live. You're in no position to make demands, Russo. Vincent shouted, dragging Emma into the room with Luca. I've got your boy and your girlfriend. One wrong move and they both die. Adrien appeared in the doorway, his weapon trained on Vincent. Let them go and I'll make it quick. Vincent laughed. In that moment of distraction, Emma drove her elbow into his ribs and dove for Luca, wrapping her arms around the boy as the room erupted in gunfire. The sound was deafening. Emma shielded Luca with her body, absorbing the impacts of falling debris as bullets tore the room apart. The firefight was short and brutal. One by one, Vincent's men fell, until only Vincent remained, wounded and cornered. It's over, Vincent, Adrien called. Go to hell, Russo, Vincent snarled. Then Adrien did something that made Emma's heart stop. He stepped into the open, his weapon lowered. Vincent took the bait, rising from cover with his gun raised. Adrien was faster. A single precise shot and Vincent crumpled to the floor. In the sudden silence, Adrien's composure finally broke. He ran to them, falling to his knees. Luca, Emma, are you hurt? Papa, Luca signed, launching himself into his father's arms. Emma saved me. She jumped in front of the bullets. Adrien's gray eyes found Emma's, and in them she saw not a crime boss, but a father who had nearly lost everything. You could have died, he whispered. So could he, she replied. And in that dusty, violent warehouse, Emma realized she was looking at a man who would burn the world to keep his family safe. The only question was when she had started to see herself as part of that family. 3 days later, the Russo mansion felt like a home. Emma watched Luca in the garden, trying to teach a young guard sign language. He was no longer hiding. "He's never done that before," Adrien said, entering the library. He looked relaxed in jeans and a sweater. "For 8 years, signing was our secret. Now," he gestured to the window, "he wants to share it." "He's not hiding anymore," Emma said. "No," Adrien agreed, his gaze shifting to her. "Do you know what you've given him, Emma?" "I could only give him words." You gave him a voice. You made him real again." He stood and moved to the window. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully." "Once I ask, there's no going back." Her heart began to race. "Okay." He turned, vulnerability written on his face. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as a tutor. Stay as family, Emma. Real family. Mine and his." The words hung in the air, terrifying and precious. "I know what I am. But you are the missing piece we didn't even know we needed. You make us whole." "Adrien, are you asking me to—" "I'm asking you to marry me," he said in a rush. "Be Luca's mother, be my wife. Take all of us, the good, the bad, the dangerous, and let us be yours." Emma looked out the window and saw Luca watching them, his eyes bright with hope.
Yes,
She whispered, and the word felt like coming home. Relief and joy flooded Adrien's face. He stepped forward and cupped her face. "Are you sure? Once you're part of this family, I'll never let you go." "I don't want you to," she whispered back. The kiss that followed was interrupted by Luca bursting into the room, his hands moving frantically. "Are you getting married? Are we going to be a real family?" Emma knelt down. "If that's what you want, sweetheart." Luca's response made them both freeze. "Mom," he signed, looking directly at Emma. Then he turned to Adrien. "Dad." His face was radiant. "I have a mom and a dad now. A real family." Adrien's composure finally shattered. He sank to his knees and pulled them both into his arms, holding them as if they might disappear. For the first time in his adult life, Adrien Russo, a man who commanded an empire, felt truly at peace. Outside, the morning sun painted the fortress in gold, and for once, it felt like what it was always meant to be, a home.